Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, after recently reading how Aqua Security, they published new research revealing that a significant majority of companies are moving to multi-cloud environments but not properly configuring their cloud-based services, my curious side got the better of me and I felt compelled to find out more. And according to new findings from Aqua's 2021 Cloud Security Report, it's these misconfigurations, for example, leaving bucket or blog storage open, can actually open up companies to critical security breaches. And when we reflect on the overwhelming amount of configurations practitioners must address, even when companies are aware of errors, most have not addressed the bulk of these issues in a timely manner. Especially large enterprises, where I think they have an average of something like 88 days to address issues after discovery. And when you consider that a single cloud misconfiguration can expose organisations to severe cyber risks such as data breaches, resource hijacking and denial of service attacks, the consequences of failing to address misconfiguration issues are all too real to ignore. And that's one of the reasons that I was excited to get somebody on today to talk about that. So after checking out that report, I invited not one, but two members of the Aqua team onto the podcast today. But to do that, I needed to navigate 3 time zones. So you've got me in the UK and a guest in the US and Israel. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all around the world and introduce you to today's guests. So a massive warm welcome to the show, guys. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
My name is Ehud. I'm part of the product management team. I've been focusing for a long time about this intriguing area of security, deliver this SaaS for multiple different types of customers. Actually, most of my career I did on the identity management, single sign-on, federation, things like that. And over the last 1.5 years, I joined Aqua, focusing on security for cloud-native environments, which is a brave new world for me and for the industry.
Thank you, Ehud. My name is Assaf Morag. I am a lead data analyst with Team Nautilus. This is Aqua's research team. And on daily basis, I lead the cyber threat intelligence collection efforts and also analyze and conduct researches on cyber threat intelligence and also attacks in the wild. In the past, managed a group of cyber threat intelligence analysts and also managed a team of analysts who dealt with fraud detection.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you both on the podcast today. And I am conscious there will be people listening all over the world, and some might have heard of Aqua Security and be well aware of everything that you do, but some will be hearing about you for the first time. And it is described as the largest pure-play cloud-native security company. But can you tell the listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving for your customers and also what it is that makes you stand out in this crowded market?
Sure. So as I said, it's a brave new world out there, right? Aqua was founded about 5 or 6 years ago with the understanding early on that cloud native is something to look at, right? It's really transforming the way modern applications are being built. And 5 years ago it wasn't that clear. Now it's kind of clear to everyone. And what I mean by that is that cloud native is both a set of concepts and technologies, right? So organizations are moving to developing software and delivering application as a set of microservices, and they are supporting technologies like Docker and Kubernetes and serverless and so on that really support that transition. And then from organizations that are developing software, this is creating a change, a cultural change even. DNA change of how they are doing that. In this sense of, you have smaller teams that are managing and owning a microservice, and their set of responsibilities are changing. And we're talking about shift left in many cases, where the organization is really delegating to the development team to be more autonomous, more able to manage their life in terms of the microservice and end-to-end, including designing how it's going to be deployed and not just what it is doing like traditionally they did. And I think that what that is driving, and that's where we focus on, is that it is changing the landscape in terms of security. It's changing the profile of what is a good security. It is changing the attack surface of application. It's actually creating, in a sense, more opportunities for an attacker to look at each individual a microservice and understand how they can attack that and analyze that. So with all of the good things that it is bringing, and the massive adoption that we are seeing is understood, because it's allowing huge improvements in terms of the agility of organizations to deliver new software and all of that. With that, it is creating new set of challenges, specifically in security and also in management, because of the nature of how you build software. And so we are purposely built to tackle these kind of problems for customers, and really attacking that new way of delivering software and how security for that needs to happen. And that's really what really set us apart. That single focus on that cloud native application. With the broader sense of what that means.
And one of the reasons I invited you both onto the podcast today was after learning more about Aqua's cloud security report that was recently released. And I think it was entitled Cloud Configuration Risks Exposed. But for everyone listening, who did the survey and what was the purpose behind the report? Just to set the scene there.
So we help organizations to scan cloud configurations with a cloud security posture management tool, and the users can scan their cloud infrastructure and according to rules or plugins to receive results that explain about possible misconfigurations, risk score, potential impact. So the users can also interact with the system, and in some cases to immediately remediate some of the risks. So we wanted to further learn about cloud misconfigurations and how these organizations that we help handle them. So the goal was to learn about what's out there, the statistics, to understand the trends, but also to improve the tools and to provide better service to our customers, and possibly to tailor some further solutions to our customers' size. So just to wrap it, the answer, we divided the data according to the size and usage of the different organizations, and then we completely anonymized the data and we aggregated some of the results, and therefore, and then basically we received the report, or the base data for the report.
And I'm curious, if we zoom out, just for everyone listening all over the world, what are the 5 common types of cloud setting misconfigurations that typically crop up out there?
Well, our approach was from security point of view. So it is not something that we've asked ourselves or compared. The most common are not always the ones that we should pay extra attention. For instance, 90% of the users had the permissive storage policy. So that's okay. It's not something that that can really damage the organization. So we actually focused in the ones that our customers and everyone else should pay extra attention. So definitely storage misconfigurations. These were on the top of the list. And we found that about 83% of the organizations had at least one storage open to the world. And it's not a very frightening finding by itself. Because sometimes we do want to configure them to be open to the world, but after the customers received the alert, 70% of the customers remediated the issue. So we understood that it wasn't supposed to happen. So if you see that all these storages, I'm talking about blobs and other means to storage data. So basically, you understand that the risk is real, and there are lots of horror stories that you can hear about misconfigured buckets and so on. And the most important thing to state here, I know it's obvious, but it's important to state here that these are probably manual misconfigurations because cloud providers do provide a decent default configuration and they are aimed to provide max protection. Other things that we've seen, exploitable services behind open ports. And we've seen that 52% of the users had all the ports open to the world. So if there are no running services behind these ports, it's not that important, but it's not a good practice. You should, the best practice is to close these ports. Also, we've seen open databases to the world. So the key value databases like Redis exposed to the world and MongoDB databases, document databases exposed to the world. By default, they are not protected with passwords. So this could be a huge risk for data loss and damage to the organization. We've also seen a misconfigured Docker API, and over the past couple of years, we've covered a lot of ground talking about these kinds of risks. So the good news is that 90% of the customers remediate this issue once they get alert, but takes them a little bit too long, couple of weeks, and it could be problematic because these are very easy to attack and exploit. And last but not least, we've seen unused credentials. People create credentials, create users, and they don't use them for a while, like 1,000 days later, I'm talking about 3 years, they're still out there. And this is not a good practice.
And for business leaders that are listening, what could they be doing to help reduce the threat exposure?
And the report itself is actually telling that story when you look at the numbers and the data and the time that it takes for people to actually go and resolve issue and all of that. So I think that from a very high level, the first thing that you need to do is to get the understanding of where do you have the problem. Really doing this detailed analysis or assessment of your environment. And our tools, as well as other tools in this industry, provide you very easy way to get started and get this detailed visibility and detailed context of what you are seeing. Right, you're using tools in what is called CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, that allows you to basically connect to your cloud environment and run an assessment and get a report and see where you have a problem. Right, that's really the first thing that we would like to see more organizations doing and really doing reassessment on a regular basis. Once you have that visibility, then the actual action plan will be different from organization to organization, but you understand the context, you understand the risks that you have. So that's kind of the first thing that people will do, and that's what we recommend for our customers to do as well.
And I'm curious, for people listening, what were the key takeaways from the report for you?
Yeah. So there are many takeaways that we took internally, right? As Assaf said at the beginning, the original purpose of this survey was really from internal perspective. Our security team took the data and ran the analysis and provided us with many insights that are actually making their way into our best practices. As I mentioned, the assessment process, as well as making changes into the product itself in terms of prioritizing different items, prioritizing items that are easy to resolve, as well as they are high priority items, to make sure that organizations are reducing the risk that they have. So I think that, maybe one of the most interesting aspect that at least I had from the report was really comparing large organizations with small organizations, because we have both, right, in our service. And typically what we see is that both of them are addressing a significant amount of items once they understand them. But maybe it's not that big of a surprise, but it is a surprise. Even though that large organizations will have larger teams that are specialized in security and looking over the security and are ready to resolve items, we see that for some of the critical items, large organizations tend to take a little bit longer to actually resolve the issues. And that's very, very interesting. We're talking about really large organizations that are basically exposed for a longer time for these critical insights or critical vulnerabilities or risks that they have, because they are so complex, because there are processes around resolving issues that will take a little bit more time. So seeing that in the numbers was very interesting to see.
And you've both been in the industry for some time, and I guess that it feels like you've probably seen it all a lot of the time. But did anything surprise you in the report?
I was actually surprised with so many organizations that, as Ehud said, it takes them a little bit longer, because I'm used to see SOC operation or MSSP operations, and it was really surprising to see that some misconfigurations can find their way into these environments, and it takes longer for these organizations to mitigate or remediate. It's kind of repeating what Ehud said, but I guess it was the shocking news for me.
Love that. And as we head towards the future, is there anything that you can share about what's next for Aqua? I appreciate you probably can't share too much, but are there any teasers you can leave us with on what we can expect?
Sure. Yeah, I'll have to do that. As a product management, we are always in the future from that perspective. We always look forward for the next thing. So our mission is very clear, right? We are focusing on applications and environment that are adopting cloud native and figuring out how to do the best security that is available for that. We are also thinking about that in terms of democratizing security. How can we make sure that the broader community can continue to do? And so one thing to mention is Aqua's commitment, long-term commitment for open source projects, right? So as we build our own commercial tools, we are doing that in many cases under a foundation that is open source. If you look at the Aqua involvement in the open source community, you will see projects like 3V for vulnerability scanning that is regarded as the best, at least in my opinion, the best vulnerability scanning tool that is open source. You can see CloudSploit for cloud security posture management, and KubeBench, KubeHunter for Kubernetes security. So a lot of investment around open source tools that we bring to the community. So we plan to continue to do that. We plan to continue to play this dual role in terms of commercial products that are based on engines that are open source. And you'll see some more announcements around that, both in terms of adoption of the same tools by other vendors, as well as some brand new projects that we are introducing. So some exciting news coming on that front. Maybe a second area to mention is really around insights. This research, as well as additional research that we are doing internally in terms of bringing together everything that we discover, right? Cloud native is about creating a little bit of fragmented environment, right? Microservices, using multiple different clouds, multiple different infrastructures, bringing all of that together and creating higher level insights out of that. That's another major area of investment for us or research for us. And there are some news that are coming on that front as well that I hope will be interesting. Maybe we'll meet again and have a conversation about that when the time will be right.
I was just about to say, sounds like we need to get you back on later in the year for a little bit more information on that. But before I let you go today, a question I always like to ask my guests, and I'm going to ask this one to both of you, is if there is a particular song that has inspired you or accompanied you throughout your career or just helps you get your head in the zone before the big meeting or delivering a big keynote speech. Is there a song that means anything to you and why? And I'll throw that one to you first, Assaf.
Yeah, sure. So, Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. And why? Because basically you can visualize the pressure and just take it out as you sing the song. And before I go on to meetings, I usually hear these songs. This song, and it helps me to relax and get prepared, get into the zone, as you said.
Well, I'll add that to the playlist. Great choice. And the pressure's on now. That's a great track. Can you better that?
No, not really. So the pressure is on. I feel the pressure. So I'll, as a product of the 80s, I'll say True Colors, Cyndi Lauper. My choice is changing based on the year. Specifically in this month, True Colors really capture it for me. Kind of always looking at the true colors of people and building together great things. Yeah.
No, still a great tune. As a man that's a product of the 80s too, I absolutely love that. But before I let you go, for anyone that would like to download the report, contact your team, or just find out more information about Aqua, what's the best starting place to do that?
Yeah, I think that the best place to find everything from Aqua is aquasec.com. You can see there the report. You can see there other reports that we have done before. Hopefully, very cool and interesting things to find there.
Well, yes, and sorry for cutting you. There's another report coming out about threat alerts, and it's also interesting, like actual attacks in the wild, and it will be very interesting to read that as well.
Excellent. Well, before you came on the podcast today, Assaf, I did read that you said when you consider that a single cloud misconfiguration can expose an organization to severe cyber risks, such as data breaches, resource hijacking, and denial of service attacks, the consequences of failing to address misconfiguration issues are all too real to ignore. And I think that is a beautiful moment to end on and something to highlight. But more than anything, just a big thank you to both of you for taking the time to sit down and share your story with me today.
Thank you very much.
The research findings for me pointed to important security gaps, and a few areas that particularly stood out was that less than 1% of enterprise organisations fixed all detect issues, while less than 8% of SMBs fixed all detected issues. And I think more than 50% of all organisations receive alerts about misconfigured services with all their ports open to the world, but only 68% of those issues were fixed, taking 24 days on average. And over 40% of users had at least one misconfigured Docker API, taking an average of 60 days to remediate. So huge insights there. And I will post a link to the report on the blog post that will accompany this episode over at techblogwriter.co.uk. But these insights were a real eye-opener for me. And if this is your world and some of these results resonated with you, I'd love to hear your side of the story. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can always get me on techblogwriter.co.uk as well. But as I always say, this podcast is all about you listening all over the world with your own unique experiences. So I'd love to hear them. And equally, if you've got a story that you'd like to share, or just ask me a question, we can do anything. This is your show. So keep those messages coming in. I'll return again tomorrow. But thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.